Hello, I'm Paul from Wex Photographic, and in this video we'll be covering sensor cleaning and how to reduce the chances of dirt and dust getting onto your sensor. There are a few essential items that you will need to clean your sensor, and from the vast range available here at Wex, we use the Rocket Air blower, a clip sensor fluid, visible dust sensor swabs, and a lens pen. There are a couple of straightforward pointers to follow in this. Most of it is common sense, but it is worth taking your time and being in a position where you're not going to be disturbed halfway through. You need a lens with you for testing, nothing particularly fancy required here. A standard kit zoom, f3.5 to 5.6 option is ideal, like this 18 to 55, because to show the dust we actually need as small an aperture as possible to get a very large depth of field. This way the camera is actually going to be resolving any dust or dirt on the sensor that you just don't see at the faster apertures. Make sure that your camera battery is fully charged before you even begin, and that you have a memory card in for test shots throughout the process. You want to be in as clean an environment as possible. Don't be too paranoid about this, but just make sure you're not in a drafty, dusty space if you can help it. Most dining room tables are a sensible starting point. The first step is to make sure your camera is clean on the outside before you even take off the lens or body cap. This will ensure that you're not going to inadvertently introduce more dust to the sensor during the cleaning process. You can use the rocket blower to blow the dust off the body of your camera. For more stubborn bits of dust and dirt, then use a soft brush like the one in a lens pen to dislodge these. Once the camera is clean, you can move on to checking the sensor. To do this, you need to take a test shot. So with the lens attached and a card in place, you'll need to take a long exposure shot of a neutral coloured background with the smallest aperture available to your lens. With this setup, we're shooting at 0.8 seconds at f32. Try to keep ISO low so that noise is not visible in the test shot. You're looking for just dust spots here, nothing else. To that effect, it's a good idea to move the camera around during this exposure time. Looks a bit odd, but I do this mainly so that marks on the surface you're shooting will become blurred and only dust on the sensor will show up. Once this is done, you can review your shot and see how much dust is present. You may be lucky. Have a look around the entire sensor, but don't panic if you suddenly see loads of dust. This is a torture test, so it's meant to resolve every last speck. You can now set your camera to lock the mirror for cleaning. This holds the mirror out of place, exposing the sensor. Now there'll normally be two options with most modern cameras. One for the inbuilt sensor cleaning, where the camera vibrates the sensor to shake off loose particles, something worth keeping active at all times if you can. And then a second option for locking the mirror up, which is what we need now. With the mirror out of the way, you can now use your air blower to remove any loose dust particles on and around the sensor. Just face the camera mount down and gently blow around the mirror box and then directly towards the sensor to dislodge these loose particles, making sure to not let the blower touch the sensor. You often find this first stage with a bulb blower may be all you need to clean your sensor of the vast majority of the dust, if not all of it, so we'd recommend performing the sensor test again. If you find that there are still marks on the sensor, then you can move on to the next step, a wet clean. A wet clean tends to be the most common approach for removing more stubborn dust and sticky stuff such as pollen grains, which can glue themselves to the surface of the sensor. For this, you need the sensor swab and a suitable fluid. Now, sensor swabs are available in various sizes, and you need to get the correct size for your size of sensor. If you need advice on this, either check with the manufacturer or give us a call. Contact us via phone or live chat and we'll give you tailored advice. Personally, I prefer the visible dust ones, just because their triangular shape means they're easier to insert into the fairly narrow mirror box of the camera body I use. With the lens off and the mirror up, you need to apply 1 to 2 drops of sensor cleaning fluid to the swab and run it across the sensor. It's important to do this without delay once you've wet the swab, as the liquid evaporates very quickly. You can then turn the swab over and use the other side. Only use each side of the swab once and then chuck the swab away. You don't want to undo the work you've just done and risk either smearing or scratching your sensor. After you've used one swab, it's time to perform the test shot again to see how it looks. If dust is still present, then you will need to repeat the swab cleaning steps again with a new swab until the sensor is free of dirt and dust. Sometimes just using a bulb blower at this point will remove the remaining dust if it has been loosened by the wet clean. The thing I would say here is that certainly for my own photography, I don't need every single dot to be gone. If I know I'm likely to be using apertures larger than f5.6 for the most part, then I'm okay with a couple of spots in a corner. They're not going to show clearly in images anyway. If, however, you are working with very small apertures on a regular basis, say for nature photography, or macro work, or panning shots in bright conditions, then you will need to be a bit more particular about this than if you're out shooting events at f2.8 and faster. Whilst it is possible to get the sensor completely clean, I try not to obsess too much about this. Taking around 20,000 shots a year with regular lens changes, I find a wet clean about once every 3 months with regular blower bulb use in between keeps my DSLR clean for my purposes. Again, your mileage may vary depending on your shooting style, your workflow and client expectations for paid work, obviously. Now, if you can avoid getting dust on the sensor in the first place, you're in an even better situation all round. Just ensure that when you are changing lenses that where possible you do it out of the wind. Inside your bag is ideal. A lot of people don't consider this, but make sure that the bag is regularly cleaned and dusted itself. Taking the vacuum to it every now and then is a simple but sensible approach. When you've been out for a day shooting, particularly if it's spring and there's a load of pollen about, or you've been to a dusty field, or a racetrack, or a hillside, or even a church hall, that you give the camera a wipe and a dust before putting it away for the night. As I said earlier, most of this is simple common sense. As long as you're careful, it's a very straightforward process. I hope this has been helpful. For further tips and advice, make sure to subscribe to our channel. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook or Google+, or visit wexphotographic.com/blog.